So without any further ado, as I say, it's time for me to hand over to Heledd, who is going to talk about ONS's new initiative, ONS Local. Heledd, it's over to you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Suzanne, for the introduction, and thank you to everyone for joining us today. So diolch am ymuno â ni heddiw. So I'm going to take you through, if we could have the first ONS Local slide, great. I'm going to take you through an introduction to the developments that we're making within our kind of newly created team, which is ONS Local, which I'm sure kind of many of you have heard about by now, but specifically as well, the devolved liaison offer for Wales. So I already covered a lot of this content at the Wales Roundtable, but hopefully this is a useful refresh for some people, or if we've got some new people who haven't seen any of this before, that it'd be new information for you. So on the next slide then, I'd like to start by giving some wider context to ONS Local. So kind of where it came from, why the team was formed. So Subnational Statistics and Analysis Division at ONS was established in 2021. So this was kind of a result of growing appetite for granular subnational statistics. So in December 2021, we launched the GSS Subnational Data Strategy, closely followed then by the Levelling Up White Paper that I'm sure many people are aware of. That was in February 2022. So as an office, we are now committed to improving our subnational data and hopefully then enabling effective decision making. So as a result of this kind of growing appetite for subnational data, we've got, as ONS, we've got additional funding from DLUC, increasing, so the aim is to kind of increase our capability across a number of different work areas. So, you know, when we move on to the next slide, I'll cover those. So ONS Local, my team, is kind of one of those work areas. And we've got this funding for 2 years, for the next 2 years, which we're hoping will be extended after that. So this allows us and has allowed us to kind of start a more definitive and noticeable kind of program of work and kind of implement changes to the way we work to improve that kind of regional subnational statistics offer. So next slide, please. These are the work streams that we're kind of delivering against the funding that we've been provided with. So the first one here is ONS Local. So this is the team that I'm part of. So our role is very much to be the front door into ONS. So for any of the England regions, for the DAs and kind of subnationally in Wales as well, to this kind of much wider subnational offer that are covered by the other work streams. So given that a lot of focus is on kind of the need for more local data, and that's on the wish list for lots of regions, we've got this work stream that's kind of dedicated to developing that more granular local statistics. So there's examples of kind of like sub-regional GVA and so on. We're also looking at how we can create new data platforms, so making it a lot easier to access a range of data sources and analysis that are relevant to kind of local users. So an example of this is our Explore Subnational Statistics platform. And then finally, we've got a work stream looking at how we kind of expand the way we use administrative data sources. So hoping to improve then the timeliness and granularity of what we can deliver. And then importantly, kind of across all of these work streams, your feedback will be really vital. So for us making progress and engaging with both DAs and England regions. So we'd really like it to be a user-led service that we kind of design together rather than something that we kind of take forward and just take people along with. So any feedback that anybody does have at any point, we are very happy to take. So next then, we've got the kind of, so more specifically, the ONS Local vision. So I've covered a bit of the kind of wider context, but this is kind of our team's vision, so what we aim to do. So it's basically set up to create this analytical advisory service for local analysts and decision makers, and making sure that there's kind of access to data and the insights that people need. So there's 4 aims to the service that we've got on this slide. So the first then is about access to data and analysis. So there's lots of feedback about the data landscape in ONS being quite challenging to navigate. So our role then is to provide support with finding and using the most appropriate data sources for your needs, and answering any questions you might have on that data. The second aim then is about influencing ONS plans and priorities. So based on the intel that we get from local stakeholders and from our DA stakeholders, we can kind of input them and make sure that they're kind of reflected in ONS's plans and priorities. So there's some things that we can kind of predict. They've got kind of this national presence. So you've got things like the cost of living crisis. It's quite a well-known topic area across all regions, but there might be other things that are of specific interest to certain local authorities, or issues that might have different implications to different regions. So kind of feedback from you and conversations that we have allow us then to kind of better understand these and feed this back into ONS plans. The third then is about making those links between what we've got as national and local data. So there's definitely more we can do to improve access to that national data that we've talked about, but there's also definitely scope to kind of bring local data back into ONS and use that to kind of complement and improve our data offer. And then lastly then is about the opportunity to support local and national networks. So some areas we have kind of been tapping into existing networks, but there's also opportunity to create new ones. And there's also the opportunity to join up areas that have similar challenges across the country. So, where I'm getting feedback from you guys, there's other people, other regional leads in other areas getting similar feedback, and we can kind of look at where priorities kind of align and where we can join up people with similar challenges. Next then is about what we're not planning on doing and what we don't want to be about. So this is not about coercing Wales to align to Westminster. So we don't want to be aligning data with England, or we don't necessarily want to be forcing alignment of data with England. We don't want to be encroaching on Welsh organisations. We don't want to be forcing Welsh data into UK analysis where this is not kind of an appropriate thing to do. And we don't want to kind of interfere with any devolved matters. But what it is about then, so the key thing that we want to be doing is working within Welsh priorities and needs, offering assistance using ONS data and expertise, and looking at ways we can actually add value. Next then is the structure of our team. On the next slide. So we've got analysts based across the country in each of the 9 England regions and then in each of the devolved administrations. So I'm based here in Wales. And we've got a team of over 20 people in ONS Local, so a variety of kind of regional leads and a pool of analysts. And we also sit within a wider team, which is the subnational statistics and analysis team. So their role is to develop the wider subnational statistics offer, and they work to some of the other work streams that I mentioned that are delivering against the funding. So this really allows us to work closely with the right people that you need to be linking up with, where we can support with your analysis. I should also say we've now got the UK-wide data coherence team in our division, so this should allow us to consider coherence closely when we do work with you as well. So that's a really important aspect to take into consideration. And then in terms of our Wales resource then, so you've got me as your devolved liaison officer for Wales and a key contact for anything that you need from us. Then we've got Kerry Lewis, who is the ONS local lead across the devolved administration. So she's got a really good idea of kind of, what commonalities there are across the devolved administrations. And then we've got the pool of analysts working across regions that I mentioned. So they're a resource in the team that are intended to kind of work across the different areas on pieces of analysis that people have requested. And we also have this coordination team led by Abby Davis, who assist with kind of prioritising our requests from all the different regions. Next, then we've got the service offer specifically. So it falls into 3 key pillars, and then we've got these 2, so we've got the strategic and building capability element that run across all of the 3 pillars. So the first part is the analytical part of the offer then. So this kind of translates to us providing you with advice on data and methodologies. So we are hoping soon that we'll be supporting projects, kind of new projects, with kind of providing statistical insights and building kind of wider analytical capability. And we are in the process at the moment of scoping some projects, but there is always opportunity for people to kind of feed in more requests. That'll be considered as well as part of that. Then we've got data then, so we're looking to kind of have a two-way relationship on this. So those of you in local government can be supported by us to access central government data sets that you need, but also us understanding where local data is available and can be used centrally as well. And then we've got this network pillar, which has been one of the key ones so far. So we want to complement the existing networks that you've got and come along to things like this. We also want to be kind of sharing events and knowledge, as well as using our kind of political and analytical knowledge to support with those. So the strategic element then is that's more of a cross-cutting theme across the service. So we want to use our position in central government to connect both local and central decision makers, and making sure that those requirements are kind of shared in both directions. And then finally, then we've got this building capability element, which should run through everything that we do. So ONS has a lot to offer, but it can be really confusing for people. So we want to kind of build local capability and understanding of the different data sources that we've got, and also build our own understanding of how we can work with you and what you might need from us. Then I've got some examples on the next few slides about some of these kind of pillars. So what people have already been asking for that fall into each of these. So just for you to see what kind of requests we've been having. So it's not necessarily limited to these sort of requests, but good for you to have a bit of an idea. So the first one is the analytical pillar. So often under this pillar, we get asked for things like breakdowns, like new breakdowns from surveys or published data sets that already exist. But you can also ask for kind of larger bespoke analytical pieces, which will go through our prioritization process. And we do want to be taking some of these larger pieces of work forward, using kind of a mix of our resources. So we're still working closely within ONS on how this might work, using a mix of our kind of own ONS local resource, some of the wider subnational statistics teams, and through the business areas that already work on those topics. So this is just an example then. So we had a request for jobs by digital industry, creative industry, and health and social care industry, broken down by various demographics from the annual population survey. So what we did, we undertook this analysis and provided the person who requested with the tables that they needed. This was used then for economic monitoring and performance of key sectors in London, particularly job creation and loss. So it is always useful when we do get requests from you to know the use, or to know what impact the request might have. It always helps us with kind of prioritizing our time when we can kind of maximize impact. And that was completed in March this year. Next then example, we've got the data requests. So many of these requests are just kind of updates of data publications that already exist, so asking for additional fields. People also kind of query what data is available on certain topics, or just ask for clarification on data that we've already published. So, wanting to know what certain fields kind of mean. So any of those kind of requests are completely within our remit. So this ask was to look for a definition, someone looking for a definition of the tourism sector, ideally using SIC codes. So our action was to look for and find, as well as providing recent publications, creating a tourism grouping from SIC codes, and then the providing interactive SIC code map. And this was going to be used to assess the size of tourism sector in the region. And that was also March this year. And then finally, then we've got an example of the kind of network pillar. So some of the networks that we've already kind of built through our ONS Local offer is the ONS Local seminar series, which I'll cover a little bit later as well. So we've got a series of talks on a range of different topics. Then we've got the ONS Local newsletter, where you can keep it up to date on lots of different subnational publications and so on. And then we've got the roundtable event. So we've already had a roundtable event in Wales in April. But also we can, as part of this, be asked by you to hold other networking events on your behalf with kind of our knowledge of what who the key stakeholders might be in an existing area or topic. So this ask was to kind of build a network of analysts and experts across the UK who had skills and knowledge in topics related to transport. So we're currently scoping this request and looking for kind of the best people to be part of this network. But we can also, have requests for other ONS local or ONS led networks. And then this is going to be used to share interregional data, knowledge and expertise related to transport. So really useful sometimes to have just a working group on certain topics. So that's something that you can request through us. So this is an ongoing request. So yeah, those are just to give you an idea of what we've had so far. Then some progress to date then. So in the first half of 2022 was when our team was established, and this is when we welcomed the first team members and got thinking about how to set up the team and what kind of the core activities that we take part in would be. And we also hosted the first roundtable in Manchester back then as well. So that was the first one. Moving into autumn, we hosted further roundtables and recruited all of the regional leads. We also considered what we would need to kind of operationalize our service, so things like the prioritisation framework and kind of guidance for things like regional work plans. So the aim is to have a Wales level work plan. Then in the winter, then we launched our ONS Local to Many offering. So this is kind of activities that are designed to engage a broad set of stakeholders in one go. So this, as I've mentioned these before, is kind of things like the newsletter and the webinar series. And then looking forward then to spring, summer 2023. So we're starting to think about these regional and national work plans. And we'll be and thinking about what work we might be getting involved with for the rest of the year. And we definitely see ongoing and regular engagement with you as a key part of this ONS local service design. Next then, so I've already touched on these ONS Local series webinars. So they're called ONS Local Presents, and they are kind of on a range of topics. So the aim is to host kind of insightful events, connecting different users with exciting developments that are happening in kind of the subnational space. So both through ONS and other organisations. So anybody can kind of propose to come along with a topic that they want to share at these. So typically we host them weekly, and some of the upcoming ones are kind of outlined here. So good for you to get some examples of the things that do come up at these webinars. So this week the ONS did a Census 2021 product and analysis webinar, showing kind of demonstration of some of the census products. The next webinar then is on the 8th of June. So this is again an ONS-led one. So ONS colleagues will be presenting on research on the clustering local authorities by subnational indicators work. So if you do want to sign up to be in the know about these, you can contact ons.local@ons.gov.uk and ask to be made aware of upcoming webinars. And you can also sign up here to our newsletter as well by emailing that same email address. You can also either get in touch with me or use that email address as well to basically provide us with any queries that you have or anything relating to your work on ONS data. But yeah, I can share my email address later on. And then on the next slide, this is talking then about the specific offer for Wales. So I've covered a bit about kind of what the ONS local team do and kind of our key aims and things that you can request. So how we're kind of rolling out the offer in Wales is kind of split into 3 phases. So in the first phase, we've been working with Welsh Government closely to shape the devolved liaison officer role. And it's also been really important for me as well to establish what the priorities are in Wales. So what Welsh Government analytical priorities are, and to understand the Wales landscape as well. So what networks already exist. So networks like these and the Welsh Statistic Liaison Committee are really important for us to kind of be aware of. Then in phase 2, then it's about presenting this offer to other organisations through things that already exist. So I presented at the Cardiff Economic Forum, at the Welsh Statistic Liaison Committee. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that properly, and also at the Wales Roundtable as well, and of course today at this Data Cymru webinar. And then we also hosted the roundtable event, which many local authorities were represented at, as well as lots of colleagues from Welsh Government and Data Cymru. Also in phase 2 then, we'd be more than happy to start discussions with kind of other organisations. So this would be an opportunity for you to provide in or feed in your particular priorities or specific requests, or just give any feedback on things that might be useful for you. We will then work closely with the Welsh Government to determine our work plan for Wales. So yeah, we will be collecting all of that information, so please do feel free to get in contact. And then we've got to kind of consider the wider picture and kind of what other requests are coming in, and prioritise those when kind of delivering those work plans. So in phase 3 then, so there's this kind of in between phase 2 and phase 3 step of developing and agreeing work plans. So it's a bit of a stepping stone rather than fully sitting in phase 3, but to be an operational service and to be business as usual, we need to have those agreed. But there's always opportunity during kind of our business as usual phase to kind of update those. We can be meeting regularly, so we will be meeting regularly with Welsh Government, but if other people want to get in contact about arranging bilaterals as well, we can meet regularly to track progress and discuss changing priorities. And then in phase 3 as well, the aim is that I am providing a front door for you into ONS, as per some of the examples I've already covered, but I'd be happy to hear from you about any requests that you have under all of the pillars that we're very much committed to. And then only a couple of slides left to cover, but the next one is on just feedback to date. So as I've mentioned, we've had lots of different bilateral meetings, but also the Wales Roundtable. And it's been really, really useful already to just collect your feedback on what works well and what you'd like to see more of in kind of that national local data space. So some of the feedback then falls into this, these 4 broader categories. So on the ONS Local offer itself, some of the feedback's been about making sure that we tailor things to the varying needs across local authorities, so to all the different organisations that we kind of are aiming to have as key stakeholders. So some people have kind of more analytical teams, whereas some people, their needs might be more towards the kind of building capability side of things. Then we've got that it's quite difficult to keep up with everything that we've got available at ONS. So we're very mindful of that, and we're very happy to help with that and kind of navigating the landscape that we've got. Also more advertising of kind of the newsletters and webinars. People weren't always aware of those. So yeah, please do get in touch if you do want to sign up to those and be aware of upcoming ones. There was also a bit of feedback about providing training opportunities, which we will make people aware of as and when they do come up. And then we've got this need for Welsh Government to be involved earlier in new ad hoc analysis as well. So that's something that we're working very, very hard to kind of make sure that we're kind of alleviating in future. And then we've got this access and availability of local data, which is a broader piece of feedback. So things like the geography has not always been useful for Wales, and often having to download everything just in order to get your kind of local authority data. There's also things about small sample sizes in Wales and local level data not being as useful. And there's also an appetite to link ONS data sets to local data sets as well. So that's some of the kind of local data feedback that we've had. Some feedback as well on timeliness and granularity that we're aware of. So some structural issues with surveys where you have to sample on England and Wales bases and then therefore weight on both bases. Waiting as well for the annual population survey to be able to do local things because of sample sizes being really small in other surveys. And then some quality issues with kind of low sample sizes at local or more lower level data. Also some kind of feedback on timeliness of Wales data, so being a bit of a time lag between the availability of the UK level stuff and the Wales level. And then finally then feedback on the ONS publications and services. So feedback on wanting more of the Wales data to be available in the Explore Subnational Statistics platform, and that platform's name being a bit misleading as well, where there's not kind of subnational statistics available for Wales. A lot as well as around the availability of Welsh language outputs, and the need to kind of make sure the process is a bit more simplified to have single point of access to data platforms as well. So that's some of the feedback we've already had and already aware of, but happy for anybody to contact me with kind of further feedback that can really help us with providing the best possible service. And then finally then on the final slide, so that's all about kind of how we work with you, but we're also aware that a lot of kind of Welsh organisations have really good contacts already and relationships already within ONS. So we are trying to kind of strengthen our relationships within ONS to make sure that we're working closely with other areas to make sure that we're not kind of duplicating effort and kind of having repeats of the same conversations. So this slide kind of highlights the main areas that we've been having discussions with in ONS. So we've got the subnational statistics and analysis area that we kind of sit quite closely to. So we are kind of promoting the fact that we are here as devolved liaison officers to help with any potential issues that they have, or to be a key point of contact with the devolved administrations. And we are also then able to kind of take our intel from the DAs and kind of feed into their priorities. But we're definitely not here either to kind of gatekeep those conversations. So where there are existing relationships and conversations happening, then we're more than happy to kind of keep out of those and just to be made aware of things. We've also had some discussion lately highlighting a gap in kind of guidance and best practice in terms of kind of how we involve the DAs, and making sure that we get them involved quite early on. So we are hoping to set up a group to take this forward and have guidance so that kind of longer term the way this works is a little bit better established. Then we've got the UK-wide coherence team, which is now part of the same division as ONS Local, and they have like a different work plan, but we can make sure that we're definitely looking to take forward the feedback on adding things like Wales data into existing platforms alongside their work on coherence. So looking at what is kind of close enough, or kind of what is coherent enough. And then finally, then we've got our themes. So we've got thematic leads within ONS Local. So they're best placed to support the kind of stakeholder requests on certain topics. So we've got topic leads covering things like trade, cost of living, environment, health, and so on. So this is just a kind of information gathering exercise where we make sure we kind of have the most up-to-date information on, and the information on who the key contacts are. So this will really allow us, if you've got specific requests on different themes, this will allow us to be able to give you that information as quickly as possible. So that's it from me. I appreciate that's a lot of information in a short space of time. But yeah, please do get in contact if you need anything from me. Diolch am wrando. Thank you for listening. I'll now hand over to Alex from Welsh Government.
Thank you, Heledd, and afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting me along to this webinar today. So I'm Alex Fitzpatrick. I lead on the labour market statistics over here in Welsh Government, but I am also acting as sort of the go-between for Welsh Government stats and ONS Local, which is kind of why I'm here talking to you about ONS Local today. I'm actually going to quickly start with an apology in case I start sounding a bit croaky at any point. I've woken up this morning with a bit of a scratchy throat, which is not exactly what I wanted on the day I was presenting at a webinar. But we'll move on. So to start with, if we could have the next slide, please. We've heard from Heledd around some of the background, work streams and main aims for ONS Local, including increasing the granularity of statistics and facilitating access to data and analysis. What I'm going to briefly talk to you today about is Welsh Government Statistical Services, what our role is, how we work with partners and who they are, as well as highlight some of our current priorities. I think there's real potential for ONS Local in Wales to help with some of these priorities that I'll be outlining. And what we'll need to consider is how we can work as complementary parts of the statistical landscape in Wales to collectively better meet user needs. Go to the next slide, please. So a number of you will already know what we do, but I'm just going to quickly talk about our statistical work in Welsh Government, what shapes our priorities and the role that we think ONS Local could play in supporting these. So I can move to the next slide, please. So Stephanie Howarth is our Chief Statistician. She leads on statistics within Welsh Government, but we are part of a wider analytical family within Welsh Gov, which covers social research, economics, geography, and data science. And this wider analytical family helps to maximise the impact of evidence and analysis on decision making, whether that is inside or outside of Welsh Government. Across the statistical department, we cover a broad range of topics. So this includes things that are devolved, and to a lesser extent, some that are not, but which may interact with devolved services. So just a kind of some of the topics that are covered by the teams within statistical services are health, education, economy, agriculture, social justice, housing, and that's just to name a few. So the work that we carry out is shaped by user need, both within and outside of Welsh Government, and transparency is critical to what we do. So we publish an enormous range of statistics and analysis in a number of different formats, as well as making open data available to allow further analysis and use of the data by our users. We also provide direct support to ministers and officials to help shape policy making in line with evidence and also to monitor interventions and outcomes. Within statistical services, then, we also collect our own data through surveys such as the National Survey for Wales, and through aggregate and record level data collections for topics such as education, housing, transport and social services. And in addition to what I've just outlined, there is also a wider leadership role that Steph also carries out across Wales and the UK to promote the correct use of data and statistics, and also to ensure that our needs in Wales are voiced at a UK statistical level. We can move to the next slide, please. So partnership working is integral to what we do. With ONS Local, we would be looking to use and connect networks that already exist to improve relationships and improve the understanding of user needs. We already have an active community of users and producers of statistics in Wales across a number of organisations. And one of the reasons why we are here today is our existing relationship with Data Cymru, who are well placed to obviously understand local needs for data and statistics through their work with local authorities, and I'm sure many of you attending today. So we also host a range of user groups that promote liaison and consultation, as well as share information on certain topic areas. So I've outlined a few on this slide here. These groups help us stay in touch with local needs for data and stats across a wide range of topic areas. So Heledd mentioned earlier WSLC. This is a long established group. It meets 3 times a year and has active participants from public sector organisations within Wales. Some of you here today will be members of that group. I think I recognised a few names as you were joining. And we've also invited Heledd along to this group to help increase awareness of the discussions and the issues that arise. We then have the third sector user panel, which draws together representatives of the third sector in Wales to inform and consult with the sector regarding statistical issues. And then we have some topic-specific groups, such as the Welsh Economic Stats User Group, which advises Welsh Government on its strategic priorities for economic statistics, and the Housing Information Group, which acts as a forum for the Welsh Government, local authorities, housing associations, and participating agencies to share views about housing. We can move to the next slide, please. ONS are another one of our significant partners. So even prior to ONS Local, we work extensively with our colleagues in ONS who are conveniently headquartered just down the road in Newport. So a wide range of economic data for Wales comes from ONS, as well as some other data such as health data on mortality. We also have a number of statisticians within Welsh Government who work closely with ONS colleagues on topics such as the census and population statistics. So we've got here kind of just outlining a few ways that we work with ONS. Both organisations work as a complementary part of the picture, with Welsh Gov boosting some ONS surveys to improve kind of sample sizes and therefore data quality at a Wales and local authority within Wales level. And we also have statisticians producing additional analytical insight in order to meet Welsh user needs. And all of this is achieved as a result of sort of a direct working level relationships as well as senior engagement. And we see ONS Local as sitting alongside this landscape, perhaps like Heledd has outlined, providing a front door where relationships don't already exist, or providing a sort of coordinating leadership role for Wales within ONS. So the next slide then, please. So this brings us on to how we can work with ONS Local to meet priority needs in Wales. If I move to the next slide, please. Just to start with a little bit of sort of policy context, the programme for government sets the Welsh Government's priorities over a 5-year term. And we also have the cooperation agreement with Plaid Cymru, which outlines a number of commitments to tackle the challenges that we face and improve the lives of people across Wales. So these plans include ambitions for a fairer, greener, stronger Wales, with social justice, economic justice and environmental justice running throughout the plans. There are also some significant sort of major societal challenges that we face, like tackling climate change or the cost of living crisis. If we look at some of these things then made in the context of the Wellbeing and Future Generations Act, we and public bodies have our wellbeing objectives, which contribute to the 7 wellbeing goals, which are depicted here in the multicoloured graphics and cover themes such as a healthier Wales, a prosperous Wales, a more equal Wales, a globally responsible Wales, and some more shown here on this slide. Underlying all of this are a range of action plans and strategies and legislation, many of which will require evidence and advice to help shape and monitor. And we also create requirements for our local partners, which need statistics and evidence to deliver. So this may include things such as housing market assessments, local wellbeing assessments, as you know, data is not always available at a granular enough level to support these. So we need to provide the support, advice and contacts to enable the best analysis possible. If I move to the next slide then, please. We've then got analytical priorities. This list is ever changing and ever evolving, and they will always be changing over time. And so it will be really important that through ONS Local, we have the mechanisms for reviewing and adapting to priorities as and when they emerge. But at a high level, the key things we require, I think, on analytical can be split into 2. So the first being improving the quality and availability of data, and the second being addressing analytical priorities specifically. So one will always facilitate the other, but addressing this sort of at a Wales and sub-Wales level will make a real difference to the analysis that we can carry out and the information that we can then make available to our users. Then on this side, sort of looking more closely at the data and improving granularity and timeliness of data, our priorities at the moment include a number of different things that I will outline now, but quick disclaimer that Heledd has reflected some of these in her overview of the feedback already received, as we had provided this list at the recent ONS Local roundtable. So apologies if I sound like I may be repeating a few things, but they're priorities, so I think that's fine. So data on specific population groups, like detailed ethnic groups, is very, very important to us, and making data that we already publish available at this breakdown is super important and something that we've been working towards within Welsh Government statistical services. And then data for small areas to allow more kind of analysis around, small area income estimates, for example, and like I mentioned earlier, the housing market assessments. Then Heledd mentioned earlier, so one thing that we've already said is about timeliness. So some economic measures, for example, GDP and trade, have quite long lead times between the publication date and the reference date of the information, which is understandable with the amount of work and processes that need to go into those. But these specific pieces of information were critical for ongoing monitoring of impacts of things like the pandemic, and also kind of ongoing monitoring of impacts of EU exit. And then there are also surveys that ONS host, like the Opinions and Lifestyle Survey, that hold a wealth of information, but unfortunately have small Wales samples, which then limits what can be done with that data. And then if I look more specifically at the pieces of analysis, then I've got some charts on this page just to show some of those. So like I said, we have an ever-evolving list of emerging priorities. A current example is the cost of living crisis. And one area that we know that there is a data gap is around mortgage payers, and not having information to provide an understanding around numbers and characteristics of people that may be at risk of losing their home if they default on their mortgages. But economy and labour market data, then, there is a huge interest at the moment around economic inactivity, and understanding what is driving this. Our previous chief scientific advisor in Welsh Government was also particularly interested in the government-funded research and development data, and how the pictures differed across the UK, what may have been driving this. Is it that different governments have different processes in place, or if so, how does that then affect the data that is gathered, and how does that affect the comparisons that we can make across the UK? And then I've written down a few things here, that more information. So understanding national and subnational patterns around industries and sectors is always something that colleagues are interested in, and always something that we get asked about. And there's, only so much analysis that can currently be done. So that may be something that we could look into more detail with ONS Local. And one that I know quite a bit of work is ongoing is around green jobs. So we have the Net Zero Skills Action Plan in Wales. And so the green jobs work that ONS is currently working on, and what may be available for Wales and area of Wales, will be really, really interesting to us. One of the other things, I'm just listing lots of analytical priorities, but I can provide some more information on any of these if anyone is interested. There's a strong interest in second homes. We get asked a lot of data for that within our housing stats team, specifically in understanding where in Wales second homes are located, what purposes they are used for, and the impact on the wider area in terms of the housing market, economy, and social impacts. And then there is also Welsh language stats. We have seen a substantial difference between the census and other ONS sources. That's what's depicted here in the kind of chart on my bottom right slide. There's an ongoing work plan that has been agreed between Welsh Government and ONS to look into this and determine what the reasons may be. And more broadly, see a priority in shaping the wider work that ONS already does, but which might be done for England only, and explore where it may be possible to provide further geographical breakdowns. So an example of this could be around care self-funders. We don't have any data for that for Wales, and I don't know if maybe possibly it exists for England, and we could look to break that down or, you know, carry that data across somehow. So those are some initial ideas that Steph and I had. Like I mentioned, some of these we have discussed with Heledd previously. Heledd has already made a plea for feedback from individuals attending today, but I just like to echo that. So knowing what your needs are is really, really important to us, so we can ensure that these are then reflected in our feedback and our ongoing discussions with ONS. If you just move to the next slide, please. So we've sneakily stolen one of Heled's slides here to refer back to. A lot of the aims of ONS Local align with our priorities within Welsh Government Statistical Services, and we see that our analytical priorities can be enhanced and supported by the offer outlined by Heledd. So through close collaboration with partners, we see that this offer can be complementary to what already exists. So we've already talked about the partners and organisations that are users and producers of statistics, as well as ready-made networks that can help to shape ONS Local's activity in Wales. So this ties in quite nicely with what Heledd outlined earlier around the aim for this offer to be a user-led service. One major benefit of ONS Local will be the capability to identify topics in common across the UK to help join up, enhance existing analysis and avoid duplication of work. But the other massive benefit of ONS Local is that we have Heledd as a voice for Wales within ONS, which is something that we haven't had before in this way, and is a great opportunity to help influence ONS's plans and priorities. So yeah, you know, I've outlined a lot of this now, but essentially we're very keen to kind of work in a collaborative and complementary way. Another plea, you know, welcome feedback or a discussion on any of your priorities. If you want to go through Heledd or through the ONS Local email, or if you want to email myself, we can make sure that those are kind of reflected within our discussions then. And I will end it there. So thank you so much for listening to me today. I appreciate that I have just given a lot of information in a very short amount of time. So if you do have any questions, please post them in the chat or send them across to me, and I will do my very best to respond to these.
Thank you very much, Alex. Thank you to Heledd as well for the presentations. They were really, really informative. Hopefully everybody in the call has found that useful as well. If you do have any questions, as I said at the start, then you can add them and pop them into the chat box, and then we've got just under 10 minutes to respond to any of those questions. I do have a couple of questions. I don't know if you can both kind of pop back onto the screen, or but I've got a question that hopefully one of you will be able to answer, and I think we've covered it, but I just guess it might be useful for really specific clarities. If our local authority colleagues or other colleagues from other organisations on the call are interested in trying to get some of the support that you've talked about, particularly around the ONS Local directly, Heledd, what's the best way for them to kind of access that support, whatever kind of level of support it might be?
Yeah, so contacting me is probably the best way. You can also contact the ONS.local inbox as well. It depends how general it is. So if it's stuff on kind of, you know, being part of the kind of webinars, or, you know, presenting at one of those, or kind of just wanting access to the newsletters and things, you can get into contact with that. But if it's kind of specific Wales level support that people want, then contact my email address. I've popped it in the chat if people haven't seen that. So Perfect. Get in touch with me.
Thank you. We've got a question. Is there a cost implication for the offer of support from ONS Local?
Is that in terms of cost implication to the local authorities themselves?
One would assume so, yes.
Yeah, okay. So it's very much, obviously we've got our kind of like limited set of resources, so it's very much on a kind of prioritization basis, but where there are common priorities or people asking for kind of training on specific topics or that sort of thing where we can kind of cover many areas, then there definitely isn't kind of the intention for there to be any cost implications for any local authorities. It might be the case that if it's just one local authority asking for something and that it's not something that's kind of come up anywhere else, and that it's something that's quite difficult for us to provide, that it might kind of not make it to the top of the priority list. But definitely where we've got priorities coming up or kind of requests, it might just be training on a specific thing. Like lots of interest in kind of some of the census stuff, so we've kind of provided webinars on that, but you can ask for other things, and where it's kind of something that we think would be really useful to provide, we can do that through those kind of channels. So yeah, not intended for there to be a cost implication.
Brilliant, thank you. And then I had a question that has just totally gone from my mind. Oh, sorry, yeah. So you've obviously talked about the fact that, depending on how many requests are coming through, and not just across Wales, but across the whole of the UK. And then you talked obviously about the need to prioritise those requests. Can you tell us how that will happen, and what are the priority criteria for that?
Yeah, so we're still kind of working on that, but I think what's really important as well is kind of where we can, so when people are kind of giving us requests they have, is kind of like making sure that we're aware of like the specific impact that might have. So especially with some of the more specific requests on kind of analysis and data and things, it's kind of well, to kind of secure future funding, we kind of need to be showing that we're having a significant amount of impact. So it's really good for us as part of that to know what the impact is. But yeah, I would say as well, I'm kind of the Wales lead, so there's some things where it's kind of small pieces of support where I would automatically kind of be able to provide that, whereas kind of bigger projects obviously need to go through the prioritization. So it does depend kind of how much it would take for us to do it. If it is just like a request for kind of, can you point me towards this data set, or make me aware of this or that, then it's not something that we'd kind of send to a prioritization process, and I'd be happy to support on those kind of things. So yeah, I hope that kind of answers the question.
I suppose, Alex, that's partly the role that you guys can play, is almost kind of talking about these projects at scale and kind of doing the liaison in that side of things, because it kind of adds that like I say, the scale to the requests.
Yeah,
maybe.
So Heledd and I meet regularly to discuss sort of things that have come up within Welsh Gov, or that users have mentioned to me that I think could be something for ONS Local, and then the same if people have contacted Heledd directly or ONS Local directly, feedback kind of what is Wales specific or could be Wales specific, and then we kind of talk about how they fit into the wider Welsh Gov priorities. But also if we're seeing similar requests coming from a number of different users across Wales, then that would essentially, simple way, bump it up. We asked this sort of question because even more so if we've got users in Wales asking for something that users in the northeast of England are also asking for, well, that would then help Heledd in terms of the prioritization across ONS Local, because it's kind of evidencing then that it's not just one local authority in one country that needs it, even though those needs are still very important. But it kind of helps with that prioritization if it's a piece of work that kind of a number of users could then make use of.
Absolutely. Brilliant, thank you. Well, that's it for the questions that have been raised, and mine, which I always have the luxury of posing my own questions as well. That's the questions that are asked. If anybody has got any, then you've got another minute or so, but if not, we'll draw it to a close. We'll just see if there are any other questions that anybody's itching to ask. The awkward moment when we sit in silence. I don't do well with sitting in silence. So what I'll say is we'll draw it to a close here. Obviously, if there are any questions that any of you on the call have got and you didn't want to raise them in this session directly, the chat, I'm going to call it the chat box. The chat box will remain open even when the meeting finishes. So if you want to add it then we'll keep an eye on it. And if any questions come through, we can forward them to Alex and Heledd. Alternatively, though, obviously you've got their email addresses on the screen there and you can contact them directly. Likewise, if there's anything you want to come through to us with, and obviously as we're kind of interacting with local authorities, if we hear and kind of, are asked about certain things where we believe, it would feed into the ONS local work, then we will obviously be making those kind of links as well. That's really important. But if there are no further questions, then I will say once again, thank you very much to both of you. Thanks, Alex, and thanks to Heledd. And thanks to all of you for attending. And we look forward to seeing you at a future session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.